How did you find out someone had a crush on you? Story 1. When I was a college work-study at a computer lab, there was this one girl who would always stop by to say hello. In all our conversations, I brought up the mutual acquaintance I had assumed she had. Then suddenly, she stopped coming, and I haven't seen her since. So I inquired as to her whereabouts, and my friend replied that he had no idea what I was talking about. He claimed he didn't know her and speculated that perhaps she was just there to talk to me. Just contemplating it makes me feel ashamed. To fail to recognize signals implies only that they were present. I've always been an introvert by nature. It's embarrassing enough that I kept talking about some guy I didn't even know in every conversation I had with this girl. Story 2. I met her at an ice cream parlor. She was the one working the cash register. When I first met her, I immediately felt out of my league. She was without a doubt the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. Someone with red hair and blue eyes. There was nobody else there, and her suggestions varied. After finishing my ice cream, I left. I was surprised by how often she smiled at me. I never dated as a teen because I didn't consider myself attractive. A few days later, I came back and asked her out on a whim to a party that one of my friends was hosting. She gave me her number, and we arranged to meet at the park before the party. We went out to eat and then to the movies. Our first date lasted for hours, but neither of us seemed to mind. Story 3. I was a team leader and manager in the hospitality industry, and I stood out from the crowd by dyeing my hair cyan and magenta. She was a huge fan of the band Crycore and took an instant shine to me. She would always ask if I was free to talk after she finished her shifts with various groups. It turned out she had developed serious feelings for me and was actively trying to find me on various social media platforms. When I ran into her at a music store and she called me out in front of my wife, I knew something was up. Story 4. When my friend's younger sister started following me around like a lost puppy, I knew she had romantic feelings for me. Even worse, she started calling me by both my given name and my middle name. She eventually found out my birthday through a mutual friend and began bringing up the age difference between us. At first, I thought it was cute, but then she started telling all of her friends that we were a couple, which of course was not true. After some polite conversation, I let her know that I respected her admiration, but she was far too young for me and that spreading rumors that we are dating would cause me a lot of trouble. She responded like any normal adolescent, saying that I could ask her out if I wanted to and that her parents would have no problems with it. Story 5. My 11-year-old daughter's best friend has harbored a massive crush on my 14-year-old son for the past 5 years. She never fails to run up to him, jump on him, and hold on tight. At first, it was a cute novelty. But now that my son is 6 feet tall and she is maturing, her parents are starting to worry. They're talking about him as if he's a predator, but all he does is stand there awkwardly. He's terrified of teenage girls and hates being touched. Tell your daughter to stop it already. Story 6. She was a coworker who thought I was moving away after hearing that I would be gone for 2 weeks. I wasn't. She used our chance encounter at the club to steal a kiss from me. It was a rare night off work for me. Now, 16 years and 3 children later. Story 7. She didn't wash off the blood, so my name and a heart were still fairly visible on her scarred arm when she showed up to class. She said she used a knife and suggested I try it. I quickly learned that girls can be wild after that, and she was promptly expelled. Story 8. In my sophomore yearbook from high school, I found a note from a friend inviting me to hang out with her and giving me her phone number. I feel terrible that I didn't notice it at the time because it probably made me look like an idiot and hurt her feelings. But I did 18 years later when I found it. Story 9. She was so thoughtful that when I had to use the restroom before class, she offered to take my jacket and bring it to the next room. My jacket was waiting for me on the chair next to hers when I arrived for the next class, and her best friend joked, "Looks like your boyfriend is here." I still regret missing out on the chance to get to know her better when I was too young and timid to do anything about it. Just having her as a friend has improved my life immensely. Story 10. For the past month, ever since the start of 10th grade, there's a slit where anyone can put anything as long as it fits, I've been discovering letters in my locker. Then, one afternoon, I went to the bathroom because I was so bored in math class, and there I caught her in the act. We've been together for 2 years now, and she finally figured out that I was right all along about who it was. Story 11. She was employed at the McDonald's close to where I lived. Every time I ordered a McDouble, she would throw in a free strip of bacon. My diet excludes pork products. When it happened for a 3rd time or 4th time, I have to vent in person. The girl behind the counter is summoned by the cashier, and it is explained to her that the bacon was her way of flirting with me. We went on a date because she was adorable. Story 12. I was giving him a ride home from a work event, and he joked about how our boss had recently brought up the company stance on employees dating each other. Because we both attended the event, but he thought he didn't have a chance in hell with me. His words. So the policy didn't really apply to him. I had a crush on him too, so it was important to me. We finally tied the knot. Story 13. I had 2 first day classes in a row with her, and she sat across the room from me. My name was mispronounced in the second period, but to my pleasant surprise, the teacher herself corrected the pronunciation. At that very moment, I felt like a king. Story 14. My husband and I were just long-distance friends at the time we got married. In an effort to avoid coming across as stalkerish, he liked or commented on nearly all of my social media posts, sent me memes or a link to a song he liked, and waited about half an hour before saying hi whenever I logged on. He never ended a conversation first, even when he was extremely busy. This went on for 8 months before he admitted to himself that I was the object of his affection. When we started talking, I assumed he was just another rambling nerd. Story 15. On April 1st of 6th grade, in front of all her friends, she asked me out. A mutual friend of ours told me she had a crush on me and was apparently still upset about that day. But I thought it was a cruel joke, so I said no and avoided her for the next 3 years until right before graduation in 8th grade. Story 16. She was working at the gym's front desk and had her sights set on her trainer, an outgoing and charismatic man. She was too timid to tell him she had a crush on him, so she instead left a few hints for him to pick up on and tell her boyfriend. Sure enough, the plan was successful. Story 17. 2 of my female coworkers and I were discussing our respective morning and evening grooming routines at the office. I worked in a mostly female clothes shop at the time. After discussing the merits of bikini lines, runway strips, and the Brazilian style, they turned to me, a man, and asked which one I liked best. I mentioned that I'm perfectly fine with having it neat or shaved, at which point one of my female coworkers walked in, exclaimed, "I'd shave mine for you," flushed deeply and quickly left. She probably didn't mean to be quite so blunt, bless her heart. I was committed to someone else at the time, so our relationship didn't progress. Story 18. My best friend at the time was trying to date her best friend's cousin, who told me that she was 15 and I was 14. Her cousin taped our hands together so we could go to the park together because we were attached to each other, but too timid to approach each other on our own. We agreed and we strolled hand in hand to the park. She then asked, "Does this mean we're dating?" To which I responded, "Guess so." That was around 14 years ago, and this year the 2 of us finally decided to buy a house together. Story 19. Months had passed since we last communicated before I learned from a mutual friend that she'd harbored romantic feelings for me. From saving me a seat near her in the university library to study to offering to bring me coffee or soda from the cafeteria to buying me snacks even when I didn't ask for them to driving me home even though she lived on the other side of town to helping me study when I didn't want to bother her, all of her kind acts were expressions of her romantic feelings for me, which I was completely unaware of. The worst part was that I, too, had a crush on her but had misunderstood her hints as harmless flattery.